Greetings, my friends, and welcome to a new Let's Play of Dwarf Fortress. My name's Tobel. I am super happy to be here because Dwarf Fortress has finally made its way to Steam with a brand new update that has a updated GUI. We've got tutorials, we have a few quality of life changes, and a new tile set for the game. I am really excited, and if any game ever deserved to take my money, it is definitely Dwarf Fortress. Congratulations to Tarn and Zach and the team for bringing the game, hopefully, to such great success. It already has an insane number of overwhelmingly positive reviews, and I am thrilled for them. So congratulations, and I am going to be showing you their wonderful creation. So this Let's Play series is going to be designed for new players, but also any returning veterans like myself who maybe haven't played the game in the last few years, and there are some new mechanics to the game, and the way some things have been done before have been changed with this new update. So we will be exploring that together. The first thing, though, before we get to play the game is we actually have to create the world itself, the world in which our dwarves live. So welcome to Dwarf Fortress. Prepare to guide your stout charges to fortune in a world fraught with many perils. So much like if you've ever played Civilization, the game engine will actually create the world and make terrain and rivers and stuff like that. Not only that, though, it also creates a history to kind of flavor your world and give you some background. So your culture, your dwarven culture, your civilization or kingdom has some history to it. There will be artifacts in the world and famous heroes and terrible beasts and things like that. And that's all part of the lore that has been built into your world. So there are two ways to choose your world or to make your world. One is to choose from these simple settings here. The other is to go into the detailed mode and make any changes to kind of really custom world generation seed items. Now, I do have a custom setting here. One of the things I changed is that I ended the history at year 100, which keeps the save file relatively calm and in control. It's enough history, I think, to give you a little bit of background and not too much to make the world overwhelming. We also have changed, I don't want to go too far and show you too many things, but I changed the setting of Z levels above layer 1 to 20, and I won't tell you what that means right away. I do want to kind of save some surprises, but if you want to follow along, that is one setting that I changed. And also I'm experimenting with this setting called periodically erode extreme cliffs, setting that to no, because I like extreme cliffs. I like sheer cliffs and things like that. So I like to see a little sharper of a world. So we'll see if that does anything too crazy. Now, I've already gone through and ran that same setting group in the domain of enchanting. So we are going to just jump in to that world. That way it saves us a few minutes of world gen time. But the history part is really cool. So it's you know, giving our culture time for it to expand. Like much like we have been chosen to settle a new location that has already happened a few times in the past. So our culture and kingdom has spread out a little bit. There are a few different types of game modes in Dwarf Fortress. One is Legends, which lets you view the history. And then Fortress mode, of course, is what we'll be playing. And then Adventurer mode is kind of like an RPG where you can explore as a character in the world you've created. So if your fortress falls to ruin, you can go there and explore it as a human, dwarf, or whatever. The game does now have a tutorial, which is like, holy crap, Dwarf Fortress with a tutorial? Seriously? But it's true. And it's awesome, and like any good stubborn player, I'm going to skip the tutorial and all the hard work that the team has done. This is our world, so ignore this little box here for a minute. We're going to explore with Wasti. Ooh, some deserty, hot, looks like hot areas in the bottom southwest corner of the map. So the southern pole seems to be very hot, and it looks like it's going to be cold up towards the north. So we have like a weird axial tilt to our planet, which means it is going to be always cold up north and always hot down south. We still do get seasons, though, which is pretty helpful. I see a couple of volcanoes in the middle of this interior lake. Another volcano randomly in the plains here. Not super helpful. Volcanoes are fun because they do give you access to a magma a little bit earlier than you would normally get it. They also create their own hazards, which are always entertaining. So in this world, you can see a bunch of little icons, and these icons represent different civilizations. So these icons in this mountain here are Dwarven. You can see in the tooltip there, it says that this is boats colored Dwarven mountain halls. We also have some swamp areas that are right in the middle of a location with humans. So the humans are probably dealing with the goblins on a day-to-day basis. And there are somewhere some small green icons here that represent elves. So the elves are hanging out in the forest, unsurprisingly. The first thing that we're going to do, though, is get a rough idea of where we want to settle. And I always, for some reason, I think of like dwarven mountains as being like cold. So I always would like to go to a more northern biome. And then we want to find a kingdom, a dwarven kingdom that's relatively close by, that's going to be our origin civilization. So if we click into here, we can start clicking through and noticing that the sites highlight in blue to indicate that these sites all belong to the same kingdom, or queendom in this case. So this is the Craft of Thorns. They only have a population of about 1,000. You do want to be careful that you don't pick a civilization with too few in number. So this one, for example, the North Handle, which is in the south, is down to about 250 dwarves at only 3 sites. This would be problematic, possibly. 250 might be enough to send you immigrants, I really don't know. But it might break the flow of your game, the normal flow of the game. So I'd normally choose a civilization with at least a couple thousand. This is pretty solid. The Hammers of Shadow, with Queen Granite Sprays at the helm. So she is the queen. She has decreed that she wants a ton of new settlements by the end of the year, and we have been chosen as one group of 7 dwarves who are going out to strike a new claim for the Hammers of Shadows. Now, in order to get some supplies and people, dwarves, as immigrants from our hometown, we have to make wealth and generate wealth in our fort, but also the caravan that comes to visit us has to get home successfully without dying. So if we were to set up shop here, they would have to cross over a goblin-infested area. And I don't know how vulnerable these caravans are. So on this first run, we're probably just going to settle in the same mountain range as our home civilization, but we're probably just going to go a little bit farther north here. So right up along an area that maybe has some trees, because that way we can chop down wood, we can use wood in crafts, we can make fuel out of it and everything like that. I think that's going to be a pretty solid location. And the tooltip here is giving us a bunch of info about the terrain and the ground under our mouse. So for example, it's telling us the overall continent name, which is the continent of Reason. That's where we live at. It is the name of the biome we're in. So in this case, the Maroon Forest, the temperature, the type of location, the type of biome, how many trees and vegetation are in the area, and surroundings. Surroundings is actually kind of important. So surroundings can change from like serene, which is in this really bright green area here, or serene and mirthful are very peaceful areas, which will likely never have a creature that tries to kill you. Conversely, if you go down here where there's like kind of burned out or brownish areas, you can see that the surroundings are haunting. So haunting, terrifying, things like that, sinister, you likely want to stay away from unless you're just going there for fun and experimentation. So keep that in mind. We also have untamed wilds, which are normally farther away from civilization. And that means that creatures will spawn there that might come onto the map and om-nom on your dwarves. Not like, you know, a titan or a giant or a troll, but something more like a cougar or a giant eagle or something. So you could probably defend yourself, but they could deal some damage. Okay, so we've got our conifer forest up here in the north. It does show it as being temperate, but it's, you know, it's northern enough for me to consider it a coldish biome. We do have some other hills over here, but this is not really a dwarven territory. It's just a little patch of hills. This is the mountain itself. Now, we don't necessarily have to settle on the spine of the mountain. By the way, this giant red stuff is another site. So this is the location of another dwarven settlement, a hillocks, if you will. And you can actually see that there's a neat little road that is running through the area. The polished ways, as it were. Kind of cool. Do we have a hill or a road on this side? No. I don't know how you create a road, to be honest with you. There's a very, very small dwarven fortress here. Balance Earth. So we would be one of the more northern expanses in this general vicinity. So taking a look at elevation, it does look like it's relatively flat, and then it moves up as I hit my peak on my voice. We move into some hilly areas. The grade here just indicates that it's mostly smooth hills all the way up into the mountain area as well. So, with all that being said, this area also has a little bit of soil, a light aquifer, a bunch of metals, and then a fluxstone layer. Fluxstone, by the way, is what we use to make steel, so it is incredibly important to our dwarves. Is there anywhere else that we might want to settle? I should look at any other areas before I continue. This area up here still has a light aquifer, lots of metals, some soil. What group is this? How big is this group? The Bust of Shell with Queen Weight Hammer. Pretty small, to be honest. 890 dwarves is not that many. I still always try to lean to having a little bit of a bigger civilization. I really don't know how important it is. I've seen them get up into the tens of thousands before, but you do have to let your history run for quite some time. So I think we're pretty much in the same spot. None of these areas have no aquifer. It does seem to be light aquifer all the way around. An aquifer, by the way, is an area that has an area that has soil that's permeated with water. So the water is going to kind of leak in as you're digging. Quicksilver Fortress, by the way, or the Kingdom of Quicksilver is up here in a kind of a northeast spur, but they're not really that big either, in case I wanted to go that direction. All right, so we're just going to have to creatively dwarven engineer an area around the aquifer in order to prevent leakage. So we'll have to make sure that we're careful about that. Alrighty, my friends, I think we are going to choose probably just this spot here. Looks pretty good. Nothing too surprising. A little bit of soil. Same thing over here. This one actually does manage to have... Nope, this is also little soil. We've got clay, sand, and soil here. This actually could be kind of useful because clay and sand can be used for other creations. So let's choose to embark. We are going to increase the size of our starter map. This is our actual playable map. And I'm just going to lean this over everything. So we've got a little bit of mountain. We'll actually just have the stream on the one side, the one flank of the map. I don't think we're going to straddle the brook. It's just a brook, so it's not really a defensive type of water feature. It's more, it's just there to help us get some, you know, water and stuff like that. You have selected a large area. Make sure you choose a smaller area if you have lag issues. Now we get to choose a couple of advanced settings here. I'm not going to go into the custom settings because I do not want to spoil some surprises. The summary, though, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. The bigger you are, the more rich your fortress is, the more dwarves you have in your fortress, the more of a juicy target you look like for enemies and ne'er-do-wells, so something to keep in mind there. We have two options. We can either play now or prepare for our journey carefully. And of course, we are going to prepare carefully, and these, my friends, are the chosen 7 dwarves. We have Ongat, Kal, Sigun, Ushrir, Tirist, Aiden, and Vebok. And these dwarves do have a bunch of traits and tags that are associated with them. Some of these things are not really applicable or things that we might not care about, but I do tend to look for anyone that's got some decent physical or mental stats, which are all normally in green. Conversely, anything that's a negative is in orange here. So I'm looking for specifically kinesthetic stance. We've got good language, recovers quickly, good analytical ability. This person might be a good clerk for us. Tough with high stamina, strong with high willpower, tough and agile but frail. Okay, so there's an entire personality system baked into this game that you would never ever know about, and I'm going to shine a light on that area of the game because it's so cool that it's there. It's the most over-engineered thing in the world, but it is really fun, and it kind of adds a little bit of personality, unsurprisingly, to your game. So Onget here, for example, and really this is just the traits here that are in a more verbose way. So he has great ability to focus, an amazing spatial sense, etc. It's kind of cool that they go in more depth here. So he tends to assume the worst of 2 outcomes will be the one that comes to pass. So he's a little bit cynical. We have things like she laughs in a unique way whenever she's annoyed. She lowers her eyes when she's annoyed. Are you ever going to really need that? No, but it's such a cool feature of the game that I think can help tell a better story. So I won't be going into each of their personalities right now. We will come back to that at some site, or at some point. I was reading her little thing down here, but it's changing. I'm well. She's just well. In life, you should work hard, then work harder. Wonderful. All right. So our skills, we're going to talk about skills here. And by the way, this entire embarkation interface is brand new. So this is all now clickable. It's a little bit easier to understand. We do start with a certain amount of points in our embarkation, and things that you add to your crew will reduce those points, right? So if we add a mule, for example, we will lose 100 points. So we will be adding some animals, but it's going to be a minute. In terms of skills, each dwarf starts with 10 skill points, and each skill can initially have a maximum of 5 skill points in it. So as a dwarf uses a skill, they will level up said skill. All right, so we're going to need a few roles specifically for our area. Now, our area wasn't necessarily dangerous, so I don't think I'm going to need a ton of combat experience. So first things first, though, we are going to need someone to dig through walls. We're going to grab ourselves a miner. Now, mining is really easy to grow and skill up into, so I'm not going to dump all 5 points into it. I'm going to grab just 3 for now. We've got coal here. I'm also going to make coal a miner. I will be changing these names, but at the moment, there's a bit of a bug where you cannot rename characters in the embarkation screen. So we will be renaming them once we get into the game. Sigan here has good analytical ability. So I want to give... I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to switch this up a bit. I'm going to bring Sigan as our miner with just a couple of points. And because they've got some analytical ability, I'm also going to give them some other supporting skills. Now, there are administrators and kind of noble roles within your fortress, like a bookkeeper or a manager. A manager helps you maintain work orders, which are ways to logically manage requests, like always have 10 beds in storage, for example. That is going to need certain skills. So a manager is going to be good at organizing. A record keeper is going to be good at keeping records. And both of those, I think, well, the record keeper could benefit from having a decent appraising skill. So this is how I'm going to give Sigan some extra skill. So whenever they're not mining eventually, and they will over time become a legendary miner, they're going to dig so much that they will be flashing with skill and glowing in all of their awesome digging skills and abilities. But we're not always going to be digging, so they will need to do something else. So we're going to give them some record keeping and organizing skills. And on Get here, we are going to give them some trading skills. They're going to be somebody who is our trader. They're going to interact with other people. And I think the only things that are useful here are Persuader, Negotiator, maybe Appraiser is useful. We'll give them the Novice Appraiser skill to make sure that they know the value of the things they're trading. All right, over to Call here. Call, nothing jumps out. Anyone else have a really good, like, social stuff? Values competition, resists sickness. I know there's ways to bring these traits out to like a number system and how that will impact your skills. I'm not going to go into that level of min-maxing. I'm more just like role-playing who's good with, you know, who might be in a good role. And really none of these people are incredibly social, so not terribly worried about that. There are some social roles that I'll talk about here in a minute. We're going to also need somebody to chop down wood. Hang on, who's the strong person? It was Tyrist. So I'm going to make Tyrist a woodcutter because they have the strong trait. Now, not only do I want them to cut down wood, I want them to cut down our enemies. So I'm also going to give them some axe dwarf skills because they are going to have an axe with a woodcutter skill. And over time, they're going to get stronger. And to me, it just makes sense to kind of mesh these two skills together. I'm also going to give them a bit of shield user and armor user skills so they can wear a set of armor and not be completely encumbered by it and clumsy. So in a pinch, we can recruit Tyrist to our military and help defend the home front. We've got Ushir here. I'm going to give them a carpenter skill. They're going to be good with wood, and I'm also going to give them the wood crafting skill. I think I'm just going to max both of those out. So they're going to be good at making things like beds and whatnot, and they're also going to be good like making jewelry or bracelets or things that we can trade. Crafting, any of the crafter skills, are really useful for bulk producing goods that we can trade to other civilizations to get something in return. Coal, I didn't anneal here. We are going to make pretty much the stone version of that. A mason with stone carving skills or stone crafting skills. And I'm going to give them a little bit of skill in mechanics, which is you're able to build mechanisms. So a skilled mason, a skilled stone crafter, they're just good with stone. The rest of the folks, we've got Aiden and Vabok. Aiden I'm going to have as our kind of all-in-one plant / food person. So you're going to be a skilled brewer, a competent planter, as well as a competent cook. Now there are, obviously, as you can see here, an absolute ton of skills. You do not need all of these at the embarkation. Really, you need someone to chop down wood. If you're going to be in a wood area, you might not even have wood. You might be going straight into the mountainside. In that case, you're only going to need miners. And I've seen people do entire parties of miners with backup skills in combat. There's a ton of ways to do this. By no means is this the good or right way to do it. I'm just using a template that I've used over time. I'm comfortable with it, and I'm pretty familiar with it. For the 7th dwarf, I'm always a little bit torn. You have a lot of flexibility here in this particular layout. So we have someone that's working with wood, with stone. We've got a wood cutter. We've got some miners. I could make another miner to help clear things out faster. We could also use a blacksmith, like a generalist blacksmith, to make metal items as soon as we can. We also could turn them into a hunter, a marks, dwarf, and archer. So they are a good hunter and ambusher in order to like hunt animals. But I think in this case, I'm going to use make use of a generalist doctor. So we're going to give them 2 points into all of the doctor skills. It's not fantastic, but in a pinch, if something happens where a tree falls on one of our dwarves, or, you know, somebody breaks their ankle or something, having someone who's at least moderately trained in medicine, I think is better than having someone who has no skills in medicine whatsoever. So Vabok is going to be our doctor, and we're likely going to get immigrants that have more specialized abilities over time. So it's quite possible that we will get a really good surgeon or something like that, or we'll just keep having Vabok train up on everybody. Now we're going to go over to our items. Now there's always some things that I remove from my cart, if you will. We're going to remove the wheelbarrow and stepladder because those are expensive and we can make those on our own. I think I'm going to go ahead and remove the pigtail cloth because it's 14 points each. We only need 1 battle axe. And that's pretty much it. I think I'll remove the plump helmet because we don't need the plump helmet. We have plenty of food and alcohol, and we are going to bring plump helmet seeds here, or spawn. I wish I could hit shift click and get like a bunch more at a time. Plump helmet spawn or seeds. Plump helmet itself, the plant, is very, very useful. You can make it in food. You can turn it into a drink. It is just kind of an all-around mecha type of plant. So we're going to be using that a lot. So I'm going to bring a lot of plump helmet. We've got rum, ale, and wine. So the first thing I'm going to add to our list is the missing drink, which is beer. Now, dwarves prefer alcohol over water. In a pinch, if you run out of alcohol, they will drink water, but they will be upset about it. And each dwarf prefers a different type of alcohol. So I am bringing a massive stockpile of alcohol at the moment. We're also going to bump up how much meat we have and how much lobster. So we have a decent amount of early stockpile of food. From there, I think we should bounce over to the animal screen because I want a couple of pets. We're going to get, first, a breeding pair of dogs. I'm not going to train these dogs into war dogs or hunting dogs immediately. I want them to have a litter of puppies, and then once those puppies grow up, I will make some of them hunting and war dogs, because war dogs are fantastic little guardians. They will act as a kind of a sensor to make sure that nobody's trying to sneak into our fortress. We are also going to grab a couple of nanny goats, or a nanny goat and a billy goat, a breeding pair of goats. That's going to give us some milk. It's, I'd prefer a cow, but cows are really, really expensive. We are also going to grab a couple of hens here and a rooster. And I think that's pretty much it. That's a good starting grouping of animals. We're also going to get 2 free beasts of burden. It might be horses. It could be yaks. It could be, I don't think it's going to be cows, but these will be the creatures that pull our cart with us. So that's a good amount of animals for me. We have 300 points left. That's actually a lot of points. Did I miss an animal? I don't think so. Oh, I missed cats. I do want a couple of cats. Not a breeding pair because I don't want a million cats, but these will help keep vermin out of the fortress. Okay, let's go over to items again. We've got our alcohol. We've got a bunch of stuff. I think, you know what I might do? I don't think it's going to be super needed, but I'm going to give a better axe to my axe dwarf. So let's go into weapons. A bronze battle axe is 50 points. I think that, I'll tell you what. We're going to give him a iron battle axe, a nice, very strong, very powerful weapon right out of the gate. That leaves us with about 198 points. I'm going to take 1 drink away to get 200, and I'm going to pretty much give them a decent set of armor. So we're going to give bronze breastplate, a bronze helmet, or I think I want helm, right? Yeah, helm is a more armored thing. We'll give them a bronze shield, and we'll give them some bronze greaves. This is probably a bit of a waste of 200 points, but at the end of the day, we can do a lot of stuff on our own. We can make a lot of the items, like even splints and crutches are very easy to make. I don't really need these. I could free up 60 points. As long as we've got a good amount of alcohol and meat, and then we have the seeds, we're going to pretty much become self-sufficient. So I wanted to give a little bit of stuff on our combat dwarf. If we get in a fight, it will be relatively useful for them to be a slightly up-armored. So I don't think we're going to find anything right away, but hey, there we go. All right, now we get to the arguably most important part of the setup. We get to name our fortress. Now, you cannot type your name. You simply have to choose some combination of front compound, rear compound. You can add the in there. It's kind of insane. So we are going to randomize this a bit until we find something that is pretty entertaining. I try to get the names that I can actually pronounce in Dwarven here. Torchbooks is pretty cool, though. I can't really pronounce Litashdikut. Yeah, that's not bad. Litashdikut, whatever. Torchbooks is a pretty fancy name. Heelseen, Furnace Paddled, Matchworks, Shake Fortress. Like Pantedguild. All right, you know what? Our fortress in true Dwarven style makes no sense at all. We are Pantedguild. That is the name of this fortress. That will be on all the maps everywhere. The name of our group, the local government, is going to be, we're just going to do this and go with it. The Dipped Pillars. I love it. That is the name of our group. You can also choose the symbol of the Hammers of Shadow. Can I actually manage to get a hammer? We can. We can get the Hammers of Shadow. This is an image of a warhammer in front of a tree because no, wait, we don't like that. We like mountains. Can we get a mountain here? We seriously cannot find a mountain. Well, fine. I'm going to go back to my tree thing. A nice sturdy oak. This is the symbol that's on all of the shields and the tabards that dwarves wear, if dwarves wear tabards. The Hammers of Shadows is an image of a warhammer and an oak. You can apparently have a relationship, so the warhammer is admiring the oak. I honestly kind of love that. Is there any prostrating itself? A triumphant pose. The oak is striking a triumphant pose. This is beautiful. This is all of what Dwarf Fortress is. This is the symbol of our home country, the Hammers of Shadows. And I think this is it, my friends. We've got no more points left. Let's save this profile in case everything falls apart on Embark. So far, I have not experienced any crash to desktop issues, knock on wood. I think there are some folks who are having some issues, so, my thoughts and prayers go out to you, my friends. Here we go. Dwarven Outpost, you have arrived. After a journey from the mountain homes into the forbidding wilderness beyond, your harsh trek has finally ended. Your party of 7 is to make an outpost for the glory of all Nil Shadim. I love it. A new chapter of Dwarven history begins here at Pantedguild. Strike the earth. All right, we are here in the new interface. Look at all the new fancy stuff. We've got buttons and information and GUIable things. By the way, if you're playing the game and you're kind of struggling with how information appears, like if you press this button and stuff is off the screen, go into your settings and change the desired grid width for scaling, and or mess around with the maximum interface percentage. So mine's at 100 to use the full, width of my interface. Your mileage may vary. All right, so our dwarves are all hanging out, and all the animals are hanging out here by the cart. It looks like we picked up a couple of horses. They pulled our wagon to the site. I'm going to zoom out, and we're going to look around a little bit. Where's our stream? We do have a brook down here. That's kind of nice. Nice little bubbling, babbling brook. I normally check to make sure that the brook didn't have a weird problem with like a waterfall, because sometimes you'll have a waterfall and the waterfall goes crazy and starts to spill out into the surrounding terrain. So I have had some frustrating experiences with that. You know what I always envision, by the way, is as you approach a dwarven fortress, like think of The Hobbit. Yeah, I know I'm going to force you to think of that movie. The Battle of the Five Armies, right? So you're right in front of their dwarven, their fortress, right? And it's like this flush, flat face, and you have to approach over open ground. And I love that idea. So I like it when there's hills that are very close together. And this, by the way, this little ramp here is a hill. So this is leading you from this level up to the next, up to the next. It's like it's not really a cliff per se. It's just like a rolling hills. Harder to view, but maybe this is a little bit easier because you can see everything, right? So what I think I'm going to do is eventually, because it's kind of like, you look how little there is before the next step up in elevation. I think we'll wind up using this area here as the main entrance to the fort. So I'm actually just going to mark this if I don't forget that this is going to be the main entrance. But there's a lot of stuff to do before we get to that. Now, the dwarves are relatively close. They're right over here. I don't really want to mess around in the plains, I don't think. What kind of hills do we have over here? I guess this isn't bad either. I prefer to work on the kind of towards the center of the map. What kind of soil do we have? We've got some white sand walls here, and we've got rock salt. So rock salt is actually a rock or stone that you have to dig through. You can dig through soil. So for example, this is all sand here. So it should be very easy to dig into this section. We've got clay down here. This is really easy as well. Yeah, that looks pretty good actually. So here's what we're going to do. First things first, we are going to look at some of these new fancy menus. So these menus can be accessible by a shortcut. This is our kind of character screen, accessible by you. And each of these tabs represents one of these buttons here. So 8 buttons, 8 tabs, right? We're going to go over most of these. I'm not going to go in insane depth. By the way, you know what? I do get to customize our friends. So I think I'm going to do that right now. Really quickly, I'm just going to throw some names out here. If you do want to be in the Let's Play, feel free to drop a dwarven name, no numbers please, in the comments below. And I'll try to group them into any new visitors that arrive. So Jackson here. We are going to have Ushrir. You are a lady dwarf, so we are going to make you Jade. Jade the carpenter, good with wood. We have Tirist here. Now, in honor of all my northern Canadian friends, I will be honoring you with a Canadian name. There we go. Traditional Canadian name, Tiffy. We've got Call. Really? Call? No beard? That's because you're a lady. Fair enough. So Call is going to be in the game here as Alice. It just helps me remember some of these characters too. It's a little bit more enjoyable that way. Aiden, you are going to become Yasha because you are next to me and you look oh so adorable. And then we've got Vabok, the doctor. I'm going to rename you to Odin because you're right next to Yasha and you look very handsome as well. Okay. So our dwarves have been renamed, and as you can see, it gives us a little bit of information here in this screen, so we can see what their job is, what work labors they're assigned to. We'll get into that here in a bit. We can see all of our domesticated pets. The Others tab is very, very useful. If a random creature jumps onto your map, like a bear or whatever, it will instantly appear here on the screen. So it's a bit of a cheatsy doodle, but it does help to let you know that there's something on the map. So every so often, I pop up Others and make sure that there's nothing wandering in here that's going to kill us. Dead and Missing is interesting. As a dwarf, if a dwarf were to, say, I don't know, fall into a river or get eaten by a grue, nobody else would know about it if they didn't see it. So eventually someone's going to be like, hey, has anyone seen Yasha in a couple weeks? And Yasha will be put on the missing list, and once they find her body, she will be upgraded to dead. A little bit morbid, but it's kind of a cool tracking system. The task list is just simply a full list of any possible duty or task. Places we're going to come back to. Labor is all different from the previous editions of the game. So now we've got these work details. Instead of just assigning individual labors to people, we kind of bulk assign jobs to a title. So I could add a new work detail, and I could say, I want anything farming related to be in this work detail. So I'm going to name this as Farmy McFarmy. McFarm. There we go. Farmy McFarm is a work detail, and I can assign this job to some people. Now, there's a couple of globals that also affect this. At the moment, everybody will do everything inside of this role. I don't really want that. I only want our farmer to do anything in the farming role. Now, you can either have your job specialized, so that means that they'll only ever do what they are queued up to do, or they'll do their job, but they'll also do other things as well. So in this edition of the game, everyone can pretty much do everything unless it's excluded. So it's almost like in previous editions of Dwarf Fortress, you had to opt in to skills. Now you have to opt out. By and large, most people do everything. So for example, we've got our miners here, Odin and Jackson. I actually only want them to mine. I don't want them to get distracted carrying stuff from point A to point B. They're going to be very, very busy for a while. So this is going to be an exclusive job. We have our woodcutter, who is Kiffy, as you can see. Only the selected people do that. We have nobody doing hunting. In fact, even if we get a new hunter, I don't want them to hunt without me paying attention. So I'm going to set this to nobody does this. For planting, I'm also going to set this to only the selected do this. But because planting is included in Farmy McFarm, I'm not going to choose anyone at the moment. For fisher dwarves, I don't want anyone to fish right now. And then plant gathering, everybody can do this. And the rest of it is all everybody, right? So hauling, orderlies, engraving, stone cutting. But like, if we didn't want anyone else to do masonry, we could add masonry here as a detail. And then say, I hit delete, but I could save it and say only the selected people do that. Okay, we've got work orders. Work orders are a way to make bulk orders. I'll talk about that here shortly. Nobles are pretty fun. Nobles and administrators, sometimes people will get appointed as a certain role. As we get bigger, we will start to get like local leadership positions, like a baron, and they will have random demands like, I want you to make 5 swords, or I'm banning you from making gold doors. I mean, they'll come up with the most random requests and demands in here. We can also assign people to different roles, and some of these roles, dang it, I keep right clicking. Some of these roles actually do things. So Odin here is our expedition leader. He was automatically chosen because he has that negotiator and persuasion traits. We also can assign militia commander. I'm going to skip the commander, the sheriff, the hammerer. We don't need those right now. I do want a manager, and if you remember, we gave Jackson some management skills. We also want a bookkeeper, who is also Jackson. So Jackson is our scribe. As you can see, he does have a slight demand of a room. He wants an office that is meager study. A meager study. That's all he's asking for. We can definitely make that happen. Odin will be our doctor. Our broker is going to be Odin as well, because they are negotiator, persuader, and appraiser. And that's pretty much it. I don't know what the messenger does yet, so we're going to leave that blank for the moment. Also, Bookkeeper does have a setting that you can basically say the level of precision. So we can either guesstimate or have exact numbers. So at the start of the fort, it's fine to probably keep this on exact. Later on, though, this is going to take more and more time away from the manager. Something to keep in mind. Objects, any list of unique items. And then Justice is kind of a cool feature. I have not really explored this crime and punishment thing too much. So more on this as we get bigger. But it's really cool looking. It's got like cold cases here. We have intelligence. So if there's a conspiracy, we can interrogate people. And they're going to give up all their secrets. All right. 43 minutes later, I think we're finally ready to go ahead and give some orders. So the first thing I'm going to do is chop down some trees. Now, I think, as I mentioned before, we want to kind of set up in this general vicinity. So I'm going to start clearing out trees in this area. So Kiffy is going to go ham. We also want to start living in a temporary area. Now, the way I envision this entrance to the fortress, I'm eventually going to mine out a massive chunk of wall. So it's all completely flush with this layer here. This is going to be all flush. There still will be a roof above our heads, or I might do it on this layer or something like that. But this entire area, I'm going to mine all of it out so it's all completely flush all the way down to this ground layer, because I think that's going to look really cool. But this will be for, you know, just tracking purposes. This is going to be the rough entrance where if you've got a wagon and you're coming to visit us to trade, you'll come in through here. However, it's always a well-timed interruption. That is I'm listening to the Dwarf Fortress soundtrack, which is available on Steam, by the way. So if you're wondering what these awesome songs are. But we're going to need a temporary place to set up shop. So I'm going to... It's such a great song. I love this. We're going to dig into the mountain a little bit over here, away from kind of my defensive area. Although, I think all this will be dug out anyways eventually, so I guess it's fine. We're going to go ahead and dig into here. And I'm going to dig in and make a early location for a farm. So farming is interesting. We do have farm plots that are now under the work areas and structures. So by shortcut of B, then we can go into workshops. Under farming, you'll see farm plot. We can have above ground farms. However, the crops that we have brought with us, the plants and the seeds, they do well, or they're required to work in underground areas. So we are going to want an easy early underground farm. Now, if we are digging into rock, and by rock or stone, I mean something like this, rock salt wall, that ground is going to be rocky. And in order to make that ground farmable, we are going to need to soak that area with water and create mud. However, if we dig into an area with clay, the ground is immediately available for farming. So for example, you can see that I can immediately place down a farm in this area. So I'm going to use this area here as our early farm as soon as our lovely miners dig all of that out. I also probably want to start putting down some early workshops in order to start making things, because we're going to need to trade with our home culture. Like, they're going to be here really soon. Our own kingdom. I can't remember who our kingdom is, but they're going to be sending an early trade caravan. So we want to have some stuff ready to go for them. So I'm going to put down a few things. First, I'm going to put down a stoneworker's workshop. I'm going to put this down at the mouth of our entrance, because stone is going to be available in here. Whenever you put something down, by the way, you do have to choose what material it's made out of. So a bunch of different workshops. We'll put down a carpenter workshop right outside our little temporary shelter. We are going to also want a crafting workshop. Craft shops are where we make things like bracelets and stuff like that. You can actually have one type of shop and different types of materials. We'll talk more about that in a bit. I also want a mechanics workshop. We'll put that next to the masonry workshop. We will need our animals to be milked and stuff like that. So I'm going to put down a farmer's workshop. Put that somewhere over here. Speaking of our animals, by the way, we don't want them to just kind of randomly congregate wherever our dwarves are. So we are going to use the zones feature to create a pen or pasture. So zones are areas that you designate where people will do stuff, basically. So what I'm going to do, and by the way, the shortcut for this is Z, we are going to make a pen/pasture, and I'm going to start clicking to make a rectangle that's going to include some water. I don't actually know if they need water or not, but I will include this entire area as part of our pen. Hit accept, and then we have to assign animals to this location. So I don't care if the cats and dogs are loose, but I do want the nanny, billy goat, hens, roosters, and horses all to be assigned to this area. We'll go ahead and rename this as the farm zone. And anyone who's not doing anything will start to handle the animals and pull them into the appropriate area. So, right now, first they're going to actually build the workshops, and then they're going to move animals into this particular zone. So our workshops are already built. By the way, that's a new thing too. And it's part of what I talked about, how everyone is opted into jobs automatically. So everyone can construct things now. Previously in Dwarf Fortress, you needed an architect to design a building, and then people could bring stuff and then build it. Everyone can build everything, which, to be fair, is actually kind of a little bit easier. We are going to put down our our farming plot. As you can see, our dwarves have dug this out. So now it is actually an item that needs construction. We're going to continue with our little temporary area. So I want an office space for my bookkeeper. I want a bunk room for dwarves to be able to sleep in with shelter. I want a storage room, which is going to house seeds. I want another storage room, which is going to kind of be just a dry room for all of our extra stuff. And I think we'll just do a dining room, a small area for dwarves to eat. That's it. Just a really small initial expansion into the clay. And again, clay is really easy to dig into, which is super helpful. Now, if I remember, this area, this map zone did have an aquifer. So we are going to have to figure out where that aquifer is. So as soon as my dwarves get done digging, I'm going to have them, you can see our people actually grabbing animals right now, bringing them to the pasture. As soon as they're done digging into the clay, I'm going to have them start delving down to look for the aquifer layer, because I want to build the majority of our base safely under that aquifer layer. I don't want to have to deal with the aquifer constantly leaking in. But now that we have rooms, we're going to need stuff in those rooms, right? So here's how we do stuff with workshops. Now, there's two ways to basically build an item. We need beds, right? So if we need a bed, we could go into the carpenter's workshop, add a task, and click bed. Add bed, etc. Or we can use work orders. Now, you can either order work orders specifically from a workshop, which will then assign this workshop the work order, or you press U, just kidding, you press O, and make a work order from this screen. Now, this is actually kind of cool. If you make a work order from here, say I have 5 carpentry workshops, and I make a work order for 10 beds. This will actually spread the work orders around to any shop in the game. So it helps to spread out those work orders to any available location. So we are going to need at least a few beds, and I'm going to make some extra beds. And I mean, eventually we're going to need a ton of beds. So honestly, I could put this number at like 20. It's fine. We're going to need some tables. And whenever you just search for a generic name, it does show you all possible materials that table could be made out of. So it's probably better to search for rock table, for example, or wooden table. Since we don't have any stone, I'm going to make most things out of wood for now. Yeah, sure, 10 tables, that's fine. Ooh, thunder. We're going to make wooden chairs. We need a ton of stuff. So we're always going to need wooden barrels. Now, barrels and bins are really, really important because they are used to help store things. So food, anything food related, alcohol, cheese, drinks, plants, seeds are all going to go into barrels. Everything else is going to go into bins. We're always going to want barrels and bins available. So this is how we're going to make use of this conditional system. So this is where we add logic. Like if we are short of bins, make more bins. So let's go into bins here. We're going to use this conditional, and it does have some really helpful suggested conditions, which are honestly really, really helpful. Otherwise, if I do this, I have to manually set all this stuff up. And the amount of items is actually, I think, just a wild card, all items on the map. So we're going to use amount of empty bins is less than 10. And what this is saying is that anytime, if this is true or satisfied, do this up here. So if there are less than 10 empty bins, make 10 bins. It's not make up to, it's actually to do the work order. So in this case, I don't necessarily want to make 10 bins every single time. So I'm going to say make 5 bins every time we're less than 10 bins. Same thing for the barrels. We'll add this logic here. And we'll say if there's less than 10 barrels, make a work order to just make a bulk amount of 5 barrels. So that's an early exploration into this lovely conditional system. Now, normally you do need a manager to validate those work orders, but I think below a certain level, you do not need a manager to validate. So those work orders will immediately come into effect. And as you can see here, oh, actually I have to unpause and wait a minute. And now you can see the first of all of these items have been queued up in the workshop. So Jade is going to be very, very busy. Also, as I mentioned before, any dwarf can do any job. So if Jade was busy drinking, she might be offsite or whatever. Somebody else might come in here and try to do her job. Now, for most things that are, I would say furniture, I normally require my main dwarf, my primary master of that craft, to make it. Because if a dwarf sits at a chair that is a masterwork chair, or they sleep on a bed that is a masterwork bed, they get a bonus. They get a happy moodlet from that. So you can restrict who uses certain workshop. So for example, I can set the workers tab to be Jade only. So there, she is now the master of this workshop. Nobody else will make anything in this workshop. So it's a little bit convoluted. You can't really restrict as much as, it's just a different way to restrict access to a workshop. If I wanted only Jade to make beds, I wouldn't use this global system for the work orders. I'll go ahead and cancel the make wooden bin thing. Cancel this. I would actually set the work orders specifically to this workshop because she is the only one who can use this workshop. So we'll make this wooden... Ah, goodness, my shortcuts are all over the place. Come back. Come back, fair carpentry bench. So we are going to say wooden bin. Pretty much the same logic. It's the same thing that we just did. So if we have less than 10 wooden bins, make 5 at a time. But this is manually set to the carpenter's workshop, and we can even name it to have a better understanding. So we're going to rename this as Jade's Wood Place. Boom. Just like that, this is now Jade's Wood Place. And if we look at the work order screen, you'll see that the make wooden bin work order is only valid at her place. So that is a way to kind of restrict access to who is building what. Whew. A lot of stuff to cover. There's a lot of stuff to cover in the game so far. Kiffy has already chopped down like a million trees, which is fantastic. I want to give him another order to keep on chopping. I think I can cross over the different levels, can't I? They're always going to try to chop. Oh, it didn't quite work. I guess I have to do this at every single level. So I'm going to do chop down all these trees. Come up a level, chop it down, chop it down, chop it down, my friend. Gotta be a little bit careful. Dwarves are not super smart, so it's quite possible that Kif would try to walk out onto the leaves and onto the tree itself to try to chop it down. And then as the tree falls, Kif falls, bad things happen, and our medic gets a first taste at broken bones. So I'm going to be a little bit cautious and make sure I didn't assign a random tree that's out here away from the area. Yeah, I just don't have a lot of trust in the logic of dwarves sometimes. We'll wait for the trees below to get cut, I think, before I assign anything else. Let's cancel any orders here. Game's a little bit laggy up here. I'm kind of surprised. I am losing some frames, which is surprising in Dwarf. I mean, it is a big map. I feel like there's not that much going on, but as soon as I think it's the shadow effect. Whenever you're above the ground, it's a little bit more for the game is generating layer on layer on layer, so it is a little bit slower. So we'll just probably wind up staying zoomed in right here. By the way, our farm plot is done. So we are going to assign plump helmets to be planted here. Plump helmet. Plump helmet. The helmet that is plump. Fantastic. Oops. Hopefully we won't still be here by winter, but there you go. The other thing I want to talk about before the end of this video, which is fast approaching, is a stockpile. Stockpiles, you can open this up with the shortcut of P and then click on Start Painting a New Stockpile. You will designate a location, and then you're going to accept it and say what goes into the said stockpile. And honestly, it's really cool. They've changed it so there's a little tiny icon here right next to the stockpile, which I absolutely love. So now you get an at-a-glance idea of what is contained within the stockpile. So we only want seeds to go into this stockpile because it's right next to the farm, and that's going to make our farmer's life easier. So I'm going to start with food. Then I'm going to click custom. And in order to kind of filter down things in a stockpile, I can either start with all. So right now, everything in the world can be stored here. If I hit none, nothing can be stored. If we go back to food and hit all in the next column, any type of food will be stored. If I do none, but then I allow all seeds, only seeds will be allowed here. I would kind of wish you could just click the X, but it's not that big of a deal. So there we go. Currently, this is only allowed as seeds. So seeds, we'll call that stockpile. And then over here, I am going to designate another stockpile. I think I'll just do the rest of the food. Now, this is kind of interesting. If I set this to food, there's a chance that any seeds will get brought here. However, we can use this setting, which is set from which workshops and stockpiles, this stockpile gives and takes items. A little bit strangely worded, but what I'm basically saying is that choose the stockpile from which the selected stockpile will take. Okay, so we want to take stuff from this general food pile. So you can filter and feed things from, like, if you have one main huge stockpile and then you have more specialized stockpiles, you can help to kind of like filter and flow things out. So everything will try to be stored here that's related to food. If there are any seed barrels, they will then be taken from here and dropped into here. I could go in here as custom and actually decline to bring seeds. This would save people a step, but if you're just using the quick buttons, it's a pretty good way to do it. All right, friends. Oh, that is a lot of content for this first episode. I'm very excited to be here with you in this new Let's Play. Hopefully there aren't any game-breaking patches that come out anytime soon. I really do want to get behind this Let's Play and kind of make a nice role-play experience with this new interface and just get to know our lovely dwarves here. Our miners need a job, so I will definitely get to that in the next episode. But what I'm going to start doing at the end of each episode is we are going to look at a dwarf and just get to know them, see what's going on in their lives. So we've got Odin here, Odin Udegel. He is our expedition leader, of course. These are the more recent feelings and emotions. So Odin was annoyed because he was caught in the rain. He was satisfied at work. He remembered that time that he remembered work. He's satisfied upon improving his mining, and he felt fondness talking with a friend. So who's his friends? We've got close friend and kindred spirit with most of our starting party. It looks like Odin believes in Etur. So he is probably, he's actually not part of a religion. He just believes in Etur. That is who Odin prays to. He is, of course, an expedition leader, the broker, and a member of the Dipped Pillars, which is our group. and he is a citizen of the Hammers of Shadow. How could I forget our home civilization, the Hammers of Shadow? His personality hasn't really changed much. You can have temporary, I guess, changes to your personality based on what is going on in your latest experiences. And interestingly, he did have a thing here about remembering. Your recent thoughts can be turned into long-term memories. And this is kind of meta crazy stuff, but if Odin were to witness Kiffy fall in battle against a valiant foe, 10 years down the road, if he keeps remembering that event, it will be in his long-term memory tab. He might use that memory as, I don't know, let's say that he picks up masonry. He might craft a table, and on that table, it's a masterwork table, and he has engraved a scene where Kiffy is fighting and dying to some kind of creature. Like, they can basically translate their memory into a written experience or a drawn experience, which is just kind of again, the most over-engineered thing in the world, but it's such an amazing level of detail. I don't know if it was Zach or Tarn's brainchild, but it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right, friends, we are going to cut the episode here. Thank you so much. Thank you again to Bay12 for making Dwarf Fortress, for giving us hours and hours of entertainment, failure, destruction, death, etc. Hopefully, our site here, Pantedguild, will last for more than a minute. Join me again in the next episode to find out more, friends. Until then, take care.